Here we go. It's Global 2.1, new unit, Unit 2. I gotta love this. This is Black Mammoth's Paranoid. I couldn't resist. Of course, this is a little play off of Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Let's hit you with the real song here. Here's Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Oh yeah, what a guitar lick. Incredible. I remember having hair like that. Those were good times. There's the man. 1970, way ahead of their time. Precursor of heavy metal rock in 1970. Killer. All right, so that's Black Sabbath's Paranoid. I like my caveman version. Why did we start with the caveman version? Because, well, here it is. We're in Unit 2. We're going to be talking what we affectionately refer to as cavemen. This is my Naked and Afraid unit. What does that mean? Naked and Afraid sounds sketchy? No. This is nice and simple, right? Nice and simple. This is going to be a reference to the sociological effect that the early upright walking hominids, who we affectionately referred to as cavemen, right? These upright walking early hominids definitely experienced some sociological phenomena that stemmed out of this sort of naked and afraid thought process. And if you've ever seen a TV show, I think that's going to make a lot more sense when we get to the sociology piece of this lesson. But let's get right down to brass tacks. What we're really talking about here in our first 2.1 lesson of Unit 2 is the Paleolithic Age. This is a time period that we would, if we analyze the root word and base word of a word like Paleolithic, sounds big and fancy. What we're really talking about here is the Old Stone Age. It's important to separate this out as the Old Stone Age because eventually we're going to learn about the Neolithic Age, which is the New Stone Age, and we're going to want to be able to separate out the differences, sort of the similarities and differences between those two eras. Okay, so we're talking the Old Stone Age here, and we want to get right down to brass tacks. We want to be thinking like social scientists. And of course, a historian, we know historians love their timelines. A historian's going to be interested in the who, the what, and the when. And so the first thing I would like to lay out here as we start to think about how a historian would view this time period, the Paleolithic Age, the first thing we want to lay out is the idea between a theory, which would be like a position, right? A theory and a certainty. And I want to be very clear that nothing that we're about to talk about, nothing is 100% certain. What we do have, similar to our position statements that I'm teaching you to do in class, we do have theories or position statements that can be backed up with some evidence and proof. And so in our little meter, right, when we talk about that meter of certainty and fact, and, question and uncertainty, these theories, right, some of these theories we're going to say are have a lot of evidence to support them, and other theories do not have a lot of evidence to support them and rely on something else, which we'll get to in a minute. So let's check out the first theory about this Paleolithic Age, and we are going back literally millions of years here, and so that would help explain that we're not really certain about stuff that happened millions of years ago, but we can make some solid scientific guesses. The first theory is the out of Africa theory, and if you'll forgive me, I do have to swing around to the back page, backside of the computer to show you a page. Make sure you're getting whatever's on the board in your notes. I'm going to do a lot of back and forth here today. And so as I swing around, let's check out that timeline that a historian might be interested in. Here it is. So here are early upright walking hominids, if you want to think of a hominid as an upright walker. And our early upright walking hominids date back almost 3 to 4 million years into a hominid species known as Paranthropus afarensis. Now, I probably didn't even pronounce that right, but I gave it my best shot, and I'm going to wing it, and I think I nailed it. Okay, so we're going back 3 to 4 million years. Holy crap, that is a long, long time. To put that in perspective, it has only been 2,000 years since Christ died, and that's how we keep our modern calendar. So we were talking about an almost unfathomable amount of time here on the early hominids, going back as far as we can to upright walking human-like species. 4 million years. Then you've got this next group here, Australopithecus, and you'll notice Afarenses and Africanus. That is going to bring us to our sort of geographic discussion. A geographer is going to view this Paleolithic age, and a geographer is going to be interested in the physical features that developed around that time period. And right now, what you should be looking at on the video presentation is a little Google Earth engine, and here is the continent of Africa. And you'll notice both of those early upright hominid walkers sort of had a root word, a base word, stemming out of Africa. And if we zoom in on Africa, we should at least be familiar with some of the geography. Here is the Gold Coast, or what I affectionately refer to as the armpit of Africa. This is northern Africa, the desert area of the Sahara. This is the Horn. Literally looks like a rhinoceros horn of Africa. And down here is the Cape or the Turn. Hello, Madagascar. Great movie. Thanks. So the area that these early upright walking hominids stemmed out of, if you're a geographer, you would be interested in this. Oh, I can make a little red dot there. This area right here. You can actually see it from outer space. We've got a nice big lake, and then the lake funnels down out of these highlands into this valley. And if I kind of zoom out, you can sort of see, even from outer space, you sort of see this sort of brownish valley that eventually the Nile River stems out of, if I zoom in even further, right? And it is this valley where early upright walkers are thought, at least in theory, to have developed in the out of Africa theory. Let's come back over to our presentation. The reason that these upright walkers are thought to have developed here, well, I guess we're now in the sort of the realm of what an archaeologist might discover. Do we have any proof to back this theory up? Well, we sure do. Right, here are some fossilized footprints out of that area. And there have also been a lot of skeletal remains found in this area. And different sort of carbon dating can be used to sort of prove the different or evolutionary process of those remains. So I'm going to skip over real quick to the board. We'll shrink that up and come back to the video presentation of the board. And let's get some notes here. So the geographer is going to tell us that these early upright walkers, if you believe in this out of Africa theory, and I'm just going to track along. This is the primary one that we're going to focus on. Right? This is our presentation in New York State as the sort of best theory that we can get our hands on. And a geographer is going to say that this Great Rift Valley of Africa was the key area that our upright walkers sort of developed. And the Great Rift Valley offered, we'll take a look at a picture in a second, but when we zoomed in, we saw that the water flowed out of that giant lake, Lake Victoria, which we now refer to it today, and that water flows out of those highlands and across these sort of great plains, or the savannas, if you want to think of it that way, these high plains or the savannas of Africa, and it generates water. Right? And a geographer would be very interested in how important the water was to the development of these early hominids. And of course, the water not only would feed the early hominids that were dependent on water, but also animals that were capable of eating, right? Or food sources. So this Great Rift Valley had food sources that were super, super abundant, right? In large supply. Okay, coming over here to the anthropological piece. I'm not going to get into the culture of these early upright walking hominids, but if I shift over here, we can talk about some of the archaeological evidence that exists. right? And an archaeologist digs up artifacts. And as I showed you on the presentation, there are skeletal remains of these early upright walking hominids. And so the idea is that these early upright walkers developed in this African region of the Great Rift Valley, and that is where this idea of the out of Africa, that we humans basically trace our ancestry out of Africa, and that those early upright walking hominids would continue to sort of evolve over literally 3 or 4 million years, and would eventually work their way out of Africa and continue to evolve and change until eventually they developed into the upright walking Homo sapiens species that you see in front of you right now, right? Us. Okay, that's the out of Africa theory. Before I get into some of the other theories, I just want to shift back over and take a look at some of the pictures on that slideshow. Right, so here is this sort of upright walking Australopithecus, this sort of missing link of evolution, if you will. Kind of looks like an ape, right? But this was an upright walker with an extended pelvis bone, as shown here, right? And these early upright walking hominids started to develop pelvis bones that could allow them to carry their body upright. Here's sort of the scientific rendition of what an early upright walking hominid may have looked like. Again, kind of looks like a walking ape or monkey. And here's all the skeletal remains. Here's Australopithecus skeletal remains. Here's an actual modern human skull. And you can compare and contrast those to baboons and chimpanzees. And here is a comparison of all the sort of fossilized teeth that archaeologists have dug up as artifacts. And you can see, of course, using carbon dating, which is something you'll read about in your homework, we can kind of trace the evolution of species out of Africa. Here's this Great Rift Valley. Again, we see the abundance of water and vegetation that would be available both for consumption by early upright walking hominids like this guy over here, with this skull over here. And here's our skull here, and you see the sort of compare and contrast, but also this water would be great for other animals and other vegetation as food source. Okay, shifting, and finally, I think we kind of covered this idea that these early upright walking hominids then extended literally out of Africa and found themselves covering the rest of the globe as such. Okay, great. So by judging by this, right, these early upright walking hominids had eventually developed into Homo sapiens by somewhere around 200,000 years ago. And then those Homo sapiens could spread across the globe and, geez, ended up over here in North and South America somewhere around 12,000 years ago. Wow, it only took them 170,000 years to go that far. Not too bad, you know? It's like a really slow ox-covered wagon. Really, really, really slow. I pressed escape. I don't know if that's going to do anything to my video presentation. I hope not. Let's come back to the video presentation. Hopefully still showing the screen here. And just a few more theories that we're not going to spend as much time on, just to throw them out as theory. The first one is the sort of biblical Genesis theory. This is the Judeo-Christian sort of version of how humans arrived here on planet Earth through some sort of biblical genesis by the act of God. Again, if you believe this type of a theory, we talk about evidence, we talk about strengthening a theory with concrete logical evidence, and this theory seems to be more based on faith. This is a faith-based Genesis theory, which means you really just have to kind of put faith in believing that that story happened. Don't seem to have a lot of socio-scientific evidence supporting this theory of biblical Genesis. But if you do believe in that type of a theory, it is a faith-based theory. Third, another theory is the candelabra theory, and that is the idea that perhaps lots of human-like species sort of arrived on planet Earth in lots of different places, not out of just one place out of Africa, but out of many, many, many places. A candelabra is sort of like a candlestick. It's one of those candlesticks that branches off, right, in a lot of different directions. And so the candelabra theory would be that you had many different upright walking hominid species that developed in many different places across the planet, and that over time, these species would all sort of find each other and become one. And that's the candelabra theory. Again, for our money, we're focused on the out of Africa theory. That seems to be the one with the most socio-scientific evidence. Thanks for joining me. Tomorrow, we'll get into the sociological development, the culture of these early upright walking hominids, and we'll take a look at the sociology of those upright walking hominids also, and we'll see where I get my title for the unit, which is Naked and Afraid. Thanks for joining.